All right, welcome to the Gimme 3. My name is Patrick Heffernan with Technology Business Research, and every once in a while I sit down with one of my colleagues and ask them 3 questions about something they've written, some event that they've attended, something that's on their mind. So today I'm talking to my colleague Bozhidar Hristov, and I know that he went to an event in Utah. So before I get to my big 3 questions, first let's hear about the event itself.
Sure, thank you. So it was a KPMG event. It was a KPMG Technology Innovation Symposium out in Park City, Utah. Great event, a great venue, a fantastic opportunity to connect not just with KPMG executives, but also with executives from all walks of life, from former ambassador to CEOs, startups, to co-inventors of technologies, geopolitical analysts. I mean, the mix of executives was, like I said, from all walks of life, and it was provided a great opportunity for everyone to think and hear about the many aspects of innovation, and innovation through the lens of business implications. There's a lot of talk around the different technologies when it comes to innovation, from again the metaverse to the blockchain, and obviously Gen AI and quantum, and just thinking through the multiple angles. Of course, the technologies are important, but a lot of the issues around talent and governance, and just the geopolitical aspects is also important. That was brought up as an element of an implication in thinking about what does that mean to the business models of all these companies that are on the front lines every day. Obviously, what does that mean to someone like KPMG as an organization that is guiding through all these implications and supporting their clients as well as they think about innovation. I mean, honestly, it was a great 2.5 day event. It was a lot of brainstorming. It was an excellent, again, forum for thought leadership and sharing ideas. And great kudos to KPMG for setting it up in the way they did, as it was very much of an opportunity for everybody else to talk about. And it was kind of KPMG was like in the back, sort of not in the back in the sense of like not being present, but they let everybody speak in how they think about rather than, we go often to analyst events and to other conferences where companies, when we attend, they want us to hear what they want to say first and foremost. This time was like, let everybody else share thoughts. Let's hear everybody do the brainstorming and provide opportunity for just people to think differently. Again, all these technologies we think and write about and analyze on a daily basis. And all these executives have even further up front, how they deal with it, what they think about. And so it was a lot of at the end of the day, it's like got a chance to experience what maybe an executive goes through when they attend an innovation workshop.
Right.
Because you get to bounce between different ideas, and you kind of like, wow, it's like so much, your brain, you just kind of like sparks up enthusiasm and think about what the possibilities are of using all these technologies. You go back to your daily routine after this, so you have to make sure you follow through and make sure you are stay on top of, if there's certain outcomes and takeaways, at least pin down on 2 or 3 that you want to stay on top of, because there's so many ideas that it's hard to execute on all of them at the same time, obviously. So it's important for everyone who attended it and everybody was part of it to take at least a couple and just kind of stay on top of it.
So great, that's perfect. So the first question is exactly that. So technology and innovation symposium, what would be the 2 or 3 ideas, big ideas that you took away as sort of really eye-opening for you or going to change the way you think about certain technologies? What were those biggest ideas for you?
Yeah, I think it's not new, I would say, but it's important to think about that every single technology. And when the blockchain was in discussion, was that, but I think it applies to all the technologies that we discussed. It starts and ends with people. That's definitely something that regardless of what you do and how you think about whichever technology you want to go with, it's we are interacting with those technologies. We are using them to augment our daily lives, improve processes, workflows, you name it, right? Making sure that everyone meets the ROIs and KPIs that they're tasked with. So that was a big piece of it. The hype around Gen AI is certainly beyond the hype, I would say. But there's a reality of opportunity. There was a greater recognition, but there's a lot of like discussion around what Gen AI can do. And obviously there was a bigger recognition of like, let's make sure we do the Gen AI the right way this time.
Yeah.
And there was a discussion, there's multiple angles of the discussions around Gen AI, obviously. When it comes to, what has to happen first, make sure you have the processes done, make sure you have the data quality the right way, make sure you have the literacy, and make sure the governance models, and all these are great opportunities where someone like KPMG can help with, because they really, that's the bread and butter: governance, risk and compliance, data quality, audit. Kind of like, this is something that they are there to support their clients as they're setting up the stage and the foundational models and go into the large language models to follow. So there was a great checks and balance around what the hype around Gen AI and really what the long-term opportunity is. And then the third one, it circles around, the talent when it comes to, the different ways of thinking about talent, and different ways thinking about how to recruit talent and what the new skill sets are going to be as we use these technologies, and how vendors need to think strategically about who they kind of like attract, who they're trying to recruit and retain. There was a great discussion on the forum about traditionally most of the big companies go after the top 25 universities because the rankings tell them to go there. But there's so much more talent outside those top 25 universities that vendors and buyers and everyone in the ecosystem rarely taps into, and there's so much potential. And there's a shortage of talent. Everyone wants to get the top talent, but there's a little bit more of that risk sharing on the talent side. I think can pay off in a long way as it comes to the talent part of the equation. And again, I mean, this is kind of top three, but again, there's so much more. I think that it can go deeper into in terms of and again, the role of and the wrapper that KPMG provided was really kind of like play really well.
Right. I want to come back to KPMG for my third question, but second question, none of these technologies that you mentioned or that we talked about before you went were new to you. No. And I know you spent a lot of time at Innovation Center, so innovation isn't new to you. So is there anything that changed your mind? Did you come back from the event saying, that's not the way I thought about this technology before, or that's not the way I thought about this approach to innovation before?
That's a good question. I mean, just thinking about, so there was a lot of discussion around metaverse. I know that's a very, very favorite topic of yours.
Yes.
But the angle that came around the metaverse was less about, the metaverse and, I guess one of the presenters was talking about it was the hype around metaverse is that.
Yeah.
The metaverse is not.
Okay.
So
that's a different opinion than you had before, maybe.
Yeah, I would say so. And it was beyond just thinking about the metaverse in terms of the labeling metaverse. I mean, obviously a new term was discussed more, like spatial computing, which I think it's a little bit easier to connect with when it comes to different technologies that are being involved. And we know that someone like Apple kind of like made entered that space, and I think we're going to expect to see more from them in coming months. So I think just the idea around the opportunity for the metaverses, and trying to find the use cases, I think it's something that kind of still keep in the back of my mind. I'm not completely shutting it off as a technology. The other one is the blockchain, and I imagine we've covered blockchain for years here at TBR, and hearing from someone who actually was writing the building blocks of blockchain firsthand, so that was just very inspiring. And thinking about then Gen AI, because a lot of the Gen AI will be around verifying trust. Blockchain
that's what it does.
Can verify trust. So thinking about those technology through a lens of convergence of metaverse, convergence of blockchain and Gen AI through that one big funnel, I think there was a lot of that just brainstorming around. But I think the use case for blockchain, I think is probably much closer than we ever been anticipating in the past, with around verification of trust when it comes to Gen AI models and the data that comes through that spits out and provides the answers to us.
So Gen AI and metaverse combined could pull blockchain out of the blockchain winner, basically.
Very much so.
Yeah, fascinating.
Very
Okay.
much so. Yeah.
That is not something you thought before you went.
No, not
Yeah.
to that extent.
Yeah.
No, not to that extent.
Okay.
It's certainly, and again, recognizing that maybe some a little bit
Yeah.
bias, just hearing from the people that were talking about it.
Right.
So
Right.
we have to acknowledge that as well. But there's a compelling use case. There's a compelling need for understanding, and again, it's going to boil down to it. It's going to put more pressure, but also opportunity to consultancies like KPMG to make that use case, to make that discussion more valuable for the clients. Because at the end of the day, if as long as you're not presenting it by another technology, but tied to the use cases, to the industry specialization, to the depth of it is important. And lastly, cybersecurity. So cyber and the cyber on around Gen AI. I think that was something that just we think about it. We know there's both sides of the equation when it comes to cyber, opportunistic, but also could be some malicious actors come into play a little bit more aggressively. So I think one of the presenters talking about how data science and cybersecurity, those two don't usually go hand in hand, or cybersecurity is not in the sweet spot of data science. I think that's how it was positioned. I think there's a great opportunity for that to accelerate, and something that around, especially as companies are setting up their data strategies, as they're trying to think about the need for greater data quality and protecting, because bad actors can poison the data that needs to feed those models, right? So I had a chance to connect with now he's kind of the CEO of the startup that came through the KPMG studio, Cranium, basically, that they were able to spun it off. And it's a great use cases around hearing more about what the KPMG that they provide the support around, and identifying the need for developing what Cranium is doing in terms of the cyber around data, and kind of like and cyber around Gen AI. That's kind of the next kind of a link to it. So again, KPMG using its core value services around cyber and governance, and knowing that's a big piece of it, and recognizing as a need, and bolting technology on top of it to accelerate and to enable different discussions as Gen AI kind of starts to prevail.
Right. Perfect segue into the last question, which is about KPMG itself. So you spent a lot of time with KPMG. You've spent a lot of time analyzing KPMG. You look at Deloitte, one of KPMG's big four peers. You know the space extremely well. So two parts. One, did it change your opinion about KPMG, the way you look at them and think about them, this particular event? And then two, do you think it was the right strategy for them to be the way you've described them, sort of in the background, just allowing everybody else to talk within the presence of KPMG, but not being led or walked down a path by KPMG?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll start with the last point. I absolutely, it was a perfect platform, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, it's they did the right way, just the way, again, comparing to other events we've attended and experienced and whatnot. I think for KPMG, that was the right format. Just being present and be there if you need to, but also allow people to connect and talk. And I think that's learning from each other. There's no better opportunity to do so. And I think KPMG did a great job just enabling that. In terms of the innovation, I think I just mentioned Cranium, the startup they just spun out like not too long ago. I think it was like just in the early spring of 2023. That's a perfect use case, and I think there's more to come from that thinking. But I think those forums that KPMG enables, like that technology and innovation symposium that I attended, I think it's a good way for them to absorb and think, but also then present back to their clients as well. So their ways of thinking around innovation is certainly has elevated my opinion around what KPMG can do more in terms of how they approach it, how they're thinking about innovation. I mean, we just saw even yesterday they're expanding their relationship with Microsoft around Gen AI as well. And again, one can say, well, everybody's partnering with Microsoft. Everybody's making big announcements around Gen AI, yes. But if you look at KPMG and in the group of vendors like Big Four, we know those vendors often can be constrained and by the way they're structured and the consensus that has to happen. And hearing the story around Cranium and the way the time to market was absolutely amazing. It's very impressive to get it up to up front and be hey, we actually get the support and you are actually good to go and you can help the clients. Is a big gap, great opportunity for. So that was a perfect use case of enabling and making me think about KPMG and innovation are not distant cousins anymore, but actually very close relatives.
Really nice. Excellent. All right. So we covered a lot of ground here. I think a lot of what you said, especially around Gen AI, around blockchain and cybersecurity, but especially around innovation in KPMG. We'll find that in the KPMG reports that you write. We'll find it in the digital transformation portfolio more broadly. And we'll find that whole relationship with KPMG and Microsoft going forward. We'll definitely be covering that in detail. So thank you very much, Boz. That's another Gimme 3. If you have any questions, send them directly to us. Thanks.